Picture a 12-year-old boy walking out in front of four judges, a live audience, and millions of people watching at home, and instead of freezing up, he grabs a guitar and plays like he has been doing it his whole life. That is exactly what happened when Olly Pearson stepped onto the Britain's Got Talent stage, and it set off a chain of events that took him from a small town in Wales to a global guitar brand's mentorship program, festival stages, and a level of attention that most adult musicians never reach. Two golden buzzers, a fourth-place finish, an online argument about whether a new rule had changed the competition in his favor, and then, once the cameras stopped rolling, a career that kept quietly building instead of fading away like so many talent show stories do. So where is Olly Pearson now, more than a year after that finale aired, and what actually happened to him in between? Let's get into the whole story from the very beginning. Olly's journey did not start in a recording studio or a music school. It started during the COVID lockdowns, when he was just 7 years old and stuck at home like every other kid in the country. During one of those socially distanced street gatherings that became a strange little tradition of that era, a neighbor pulled out a guitar and started playing for the small crowd outside. Something about it caught Olly's attention immediately, and he decided he wanted to learn. The person who stepped in to teach him was his grandfather, Lee Hughes, who was not a professional musician but knew enough to get him started. Because of the restrictions at the time, those early lessons happened over Zoom, with the two of them sitting in separate rooms trying to make it work. Once things opened back up, the lessons moved in person, and that is when people around Olly began to notice just how quickly he was picking things up. By all accounts, this was not a casual hobby for him. His family has said that some weeks he would spend hours at a time working through riffs with his grandfather, going over the same passages until he had them down. What stood out to the people around him was not just his dedication but how fast he absorbed new techniques, to the point where the lessons stopped feeling like lessons and started feeling like two guitarists trading ideas back and forth. Olly has said he was drawn most to guitarists like AC/DC's Angus Young, and it shows in the raw, high-energy style he ended up developing rather than a more polished, classical approach. His grandfather also took him to guitar shows around the country in those early years, giving him a chance to see and hear professional-level instruments long before he ever stepped onto a television stage. The moment his talent reached a wider audience came through a video filmed in Chester, where he played the instrumental classic, Apache, in the street, part of a small local gathering rather than any kind of organized concert. Someone uploaded the clip to YouTube, and it took off, eventually racking up more than 15 million views. That video is really where the public first got a glimpse of what he could do, years before Britain's Got Talent ever came into the picture, and it laid the groundwork for the reputation he would carry with him into his audition. By the time he was performing regularly at local guitar shows and small events around Wrexham, the people who followed his progress closely already suspected he was headed for something bigger than street performances. When he finally walked onto the Britain's Got Talent stage in March 2025, he was 11 years old, wearing a backwards cap and holding a custom guitar with a wireless setup that let him move freely across the stage and even step down in front of the judge's desk while he played. He opened with a medley that ran through AC/DC's Highway to Hell, Van Halen's Jump, and Queen's Don't Stop Me Now, playing solos in the style of guitarists decades older than him. The reaction from the judges was immediate. Amanda Holden stood up and pressed her golden buzzer, sending him straight through to the semi-finals, while Simon Cowell told him he was a genuinely gifted musician, and the rest of the panel praised how confidently he carried himself for someone so young. Online, his audition clip spread fast, eventually being viewed tens of millions of times across YouTube and other platforms, and it did not take long before he was being invited onto daytime television to talk about the moment. The 2025 season also introduced something Britain's Got Talent had never done before, a golden buzzer that judges could use during the live semi-finals, not just during auditions. In previous years, once the live show started, every act had to rely entirely on the public vote. This time, each week one judge or host had the option to send a single act straight to the final. When Olly's semi-final came around in May 2025, he came back with another high-energy medley, running through Thunderstruck, Sweet Child O' Mine, and Livin' on a Prayer. Simon Cowell stood up before he even gave his comments and pressed the semi-final golden buzzer for him, making Olly the only act that season to receive 2 golden buzzers and sending him directly into the final. That new twist on the format did not sit well with everyone watching at home. During that same semifinal, a dance group called Cheer Remans put on a performance that had the studio audience chanting for another golden buzzer, but the rule only allowed one per night, and it had already gone to Olly. When the group did not get through, viewers took to social media to vent, with plenty of people online calling the new rule unfair or unnecessary. It was less a scandal directed at Olly personally and more a broader argument about whether adding a second golden buzzer to the live shows made the competition feel less fair to everyone else on the bill that night. Either way, it became one of the more talked-about storylines of that season, and it followed Olly's name into the headlines even though the criticism was really aimed at the format itself. The final took place on May 31st, 2025, and it did not go entirely smoothly behind the scenes either. Olly was scheduled to perform, and just before he was due to go on, the production had to pause because the stage was not ready for his setup, forcing the hosts to fill time live on air while the crew scrambled to get everything in place backstage. When he finally did perform, he brought out 2 live drummers and played Live and Let Die and Bohemian Rhapsody, turning his slot into something closer to a full rock concert than a typical talent show act. The judges were on their feet, and for a moment, it looked like he might take the whole competition. When the results came in, though, he finished in 4th place, with magician Harry Moulding taking the win, a dance group called the Blackouts finishing as runner-up, and 9-year-old gymnast by Nida Chaitrai rounding out the top 3. Olly still received a standing ovation, and reaching the final at all, let alone with 2 golden buzzers in a single season, was already a remarkable run for an 11-year-old going up against adult performers and seasoned acts. Back home, the reaction had nothing to do with where he placed. At Abermorda Community Primary School in Wrexham, staff and students celebrated his run with an assembly, and the school posted publicly about how proud they were of him and everything he had achieved. Some of the younger pupils reportedly started showing up wearing backwards caps of their own, copying the look he wore on stage. Wrexham Council shared the school's post and added its own congratulations, and local officials mentioned his name during meetings, treating his run on the show as something the whole area could take pride in. Local businesses put up handwritten signs congratulating him, and newspapers in North Wales ran features covering his result almost as if it were a major local event rather than a 4th-place finish on a national competition. In Chester, where his Apache video had first gone viral years earlier, residents also claimed a piece of his success story, remembering the street performances that came long before the television cameras ever showed up. For a while after the finale, Olly was doing rounds of local and national media, including an appearance on the Britain's Got Talent spin-off program and interviews with BBC Radio Wales and BBC Radio Manchester, talking about what it felt like to perform in front of that many people and how much his grandfather had shaped his playing. Local television crews visited the family home for interviews, and newspapers printed features quoting his parents about how quickly everything had happened and how proud they were of the effort he put into both his playing and his stage presence. Despite the surge in attention, his social media account stayed in his family's hands rather than becoming something he ran himself, and the vast majority of posts were simple thank you messages to supporters. That decision says a lot about how the people around him tried to manage the sudden spotlight without letting it take over an 11-year-old's life. What is genuinely interesting about Olly's story is what happened once the show stopped airing and the interviews slowed down, because instead of fading out the way a lot of young reality show contestants do, his career kept moving, just in a different direction. Rather than chasing more television appearances, he started building something closer to an actual career in the guitar world. One of the clearest signs of that came when he was selected for the Gibson Generation Group, known as G3, Class of 2027. This is not a talent competition or anything resembling Britain's Got Talent. It is a 2-year artist development program run by Gibson, one of the most recognized guitar makers in the world, built to support a small group of young musicians with real long-term potential. The Class of 2027 includes players from the United Kingdom, the United States, Brazil, Turkey, and China, and being included put Olly in a completely different category than the boy from the talent show. He is now being treated as a developing professional musician with people actively investing in where his career goes over the next several years. Through the program, Olly gets one-on-one support from Gibson's artist relations team, access to instruments, coaching sessions with professional musicians, and chances to perform at events alongside more established players. Speaking about being chosen, Olly said he had always loved Gibson guitars, and that being invited into it felt like an honor, describing the mentoring as a chance to learn from people with real experience in the industry and calling the group of young musicians one big family who support each other. Gibson's own team has described the program as intentionally small so the company can build lasting relationships with each artist rather than treating them as a short-term promotional moment. That kind of structured mentorship gives Olly something a talent show format simply cannot offer. A long-term plan that does not depend on staying famous through television, built instead around years of coaching, performance experience, and industry connections. Since joining the program, he has kept performing regularly and in some pretty notable settings. In February 2026, he played at the Gibson Garage Fest in London, held at the company's first retail store outside the United States, sharing the stage with other musicians as part of a wider 2-week showcase of new talent and established guitar culture. He has also picked up several equipment endorsements over the past couple of years, working with brands including Fairclaw Guitars, Skin Pro Audio, Patrick James Eggle Handmade UK Guitars, and Scott Dixon Flight Cases, some of which started before Britain's Got Talent, but became far more visible once his profile grew. Those partnerships have put him in front of a different kind of audience than television viewers, playing at guitar shows and industry events for people who follow the instrument closely rather than casual talent show fans, and giving him hands-on experience demonstrating professional gear. He has also kept a busy schedule of live shows around the UK rather than disappearing between festival bookings. He has appeared at Deva Fest in Cheshire, played sets built around classic rock staples, and joined the lineup for Bonfest in Kirriemuir, Scotland, an AC/DC-focused festival marking its 20th anniversary in 2026 alongside what would have been the 80th birthday of the band's late original frontman, Bon Scott. That same lineup featured former AC/DC drummer Chris Slade, putting Olly on a bill alongside a musician who actually recorded and toured with the band that first inspired him to pick up the guitar in the first place, a full-circle moment for a kid whose favorite player growing up was AC/DC's Angus Young. Beyond festival stages, he has taken part in more unusual projects too, including playing lead guitar during a public flash mob performance of Bohemian Rhapsody that spread widely online after it was organized by a pianist in the middle of a busy public space, and joining a promotional performance tied to a UK streaming platform's launch. He has also built a growing following on his own YouTube channel and social accounts, where fans can catch clips of his festival sets and informal jam sessions between the bigger, headline-making appearances. Looking at everything he has done since the finale, there is a clear pattern to how his career has actually developed. Instead of trying to stretch out his 15 minutes of television fame, Olly and the people around him have leaned into building something more durable, spending time on mentorship, live performance experience, and relationships with people in the music industry rather than chasing headlines. That is part of why some casual viewers might assume he disappeared after finishing fourth. He simply is not appearing on a weekly television broadcast anymore. But if you look at what he has actually been doing, from the Gibson program to festival stages shared with musicians tied to the very bands that inspired him in the first place, it looks less like a story that ended and more like one that is still being written. For a kid who started out learning chords over a video call with his grandfather during lockdown, that is a pretty remarkable place to be at 12 years old. So that is the real story of what happened to Olly Pearson after Britain's Got Talent, from a viral street performance in Chester to 2 golden buzzers, a 4th-place finish, and a mentorship program built to shape the next generation of guitarists. What do you think comes next for him, and which musicians would you like to see him share a stage with in the future? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more updates on where your favorite talent show stars are today.